everyone, this is Jan with What You Make It, and I am back with another project for our Christmas 2013 series. Today I'm going to be showing you how I created these fun little skate scenes using the Tim Holtz alteration die. Love that die, and when I saw it I knew there were going to be so many kinds of projects that I wanted to use it on. So what I thought today is I would show you how I did this one. It's a little intricate and it may not be something that you want to do all the steps on for every project that you use with these skates, but I thought maybe there would be one or two techniques in there that you would enjoy, and so I thought I would show you how I did it from start to finish. So let's get started. To begin with, I went ahead and I cut all the pieces. I used 4 of the skates, and then for the skate blades I used this mirrored paper by Tim Holtz that you can get, and it's very shiny, and it ends up being great for the skate blades. But in order to create the scenes, I actually cut 2 extra of each of the skates, and then I'm going to cut out the area that I'm going to use for that skate. I want to do the background of it, just kind of the old worn vintage skates, but then the foreground I'm going to create a scene in, and there's a little line that you can follow, and I just took my detailed scissors and followed it around. And just be careful, there are 2 different skates. That's one of the things I love about this die set, is that there really are 2 different skates. They have a little bit different profile on them, and so you want to make sure that you have one of each skate for the background and for the front. We're going to work on the background first, and so you want to make sure you have one of each kind of skate. You can do that by lining them up, and then I used distress ink in antique linen and walnut stain, and I started with antique linen, and I'm using my distressing tool there, and I'm starting on my craft mat, and I'm just adding a little bit of kind of that antique linen weathered leather look back there. And you can see that when I put the other piece in front of it, you can kind of see what's going to show through, so you don't have to make a lot of effort to stain all of it, but you want to get down the fronts for sure and across that top. And then I wanted to kind of draw attention to where the laces go, and so I put a little water out on the mat and I'm blending that together. I am working on watercolor paper. These skates are die cut out of watercolor paper. Those of you that have been watching me for a while know that when I start working on these kinds of projects, I almost always begin with watercolor paper because it stands up really well to all of the media we're going to put on it. Now, the other part that is going to show is the heel, and I'm taking my walnut stain and going and darkening that heel in really nicely. You don't have to worry about getting the ink down there on the blade, because we're going to cover that up with the mirror paper. But I'm just taking a small pencil, not a small pencil, a small paintbrush, and I've put a little walnut stain directly onto the craft mat, and then with just a wet brush I'm picking up that ink and just going lightly around where the slits are for the shoestrings. And I don't know if you have seen this before, but those actually are cut all the way through, and later we're going to come back and actually add laces to it. Just so many nice details here on this die that Tim Holtz has designed. It's just a great one. I'm going to use these particular little skates for a project I'll tell you about here in a minute. I'm using my distress markers to add, you know how on your older shoes they were kind of made of layers of wood together, and so I'm just adding those little layer lines in with the brush of my distress marker and walnut stain, and then I'm taking some water and actually kind of softening those lines. It's on projects like this, I know that these are a little over the top projects, but when I get to making Christmas projects for people that I love, I want to do some of those extra touches, and so I'm just kind of showing you some things that you could do. You don't have to do them all yourself. Okay, to create the winter sky background, I'm going to start with tumbled glass, and I'm going to just work it in from starting at the edge, going to the center. We're going to darken this up a lot. We're going to put a lot of ink on here. Again, this is why I suggest we work with watercolor paper. It gives you the option of putting a lot of ink on, putting water on, doing all kinds of things, and it just doesn't make the paper fall apart. So now I'm going to move to chipped sapphire. And I really do think that that tumbled glass underneath the chipped sapphire really kind of gives you that night sky look. If you only have one, use what you have. You all know I'm a big believer in use what you have, but I really do like the combination of the chipped sapphire on top of the tumbled glass. They work really well together. And I'm going to go kind of back and forth, just layering them. I find that I like the way things look when we have added layers of color on here. So when I get it how I want it, now I want to add some snow. And there's a lot of things that you could do, but I'm going to show you a really cool technique. Because the scale of these skates is such that I don't want really big snowflakes, I'm going to add some Delusions ink into just a little palette here. And it doesn't take much, but I do like the Delusions ink because it's kind of opaque. It's going to cover up. So I'm going to add just a little Perfect Pearl powder in Perfect Pearl into that, and that's going to give me kind of a shimmery look. I don't know why I haven't thought of this before. I like the opaqueness of the Delusions ink, but I wanted some sparkle to it. Great way to do it, just put them together. Now here, I'm going to show you just a little technique that I have here. You can see that toothbrush hopefully is not one that came directly from my bathroom. It isn't. It is one of those tools that I just keep around. And I wanted to do a little splattering of my snow. And I started to jump right into it and then thought, oh, maybe I ought to show you why I'm doing what I'm going to do. So if you've loaded your brush up and you just kind of did you would get some kind of round dots, but look, you might get that really big blob. So my solution with my toothbrush is to take just a very small, you could use a toothpick probably, but if you do that, you get some really nice little small dots. And that's what we want because this is not a huge snow scene. I need them to be kind of small and to scale. So there we are. And because our distress ink is reactive with water and liquid, it actually kind of pools up a little bit underneath our snow there. It was the perfect touch. Thought I'd bring that up where you could see it. And then I wanted a few little bit larger, or I didn't get a spot where I wanted it, so I'm using the very small end of the stylus. It's a very small stylus, and I'm just touching it into the ink and adding a few more. I guess they're not totally random snowflakes because I'm putting them where I want them. But you know, that's the beauty of art. We can either leave it the way it is or add to it. And I chose to add to it just a little bit because I wanted lots and lots of snowflakes for my ice skates. Okay, so now those have dried and I'm fitting them, and I realize I've put them on the wrong side, but the thing that I'm going to use to make the little village is this Memory Box Village, Winter Village. And I just use a piece of my watercolor paper that I had cut the skates out. And the cool thing about this die is that it cuts that upper edge, but it's not cutting out the bottom. So it could go on, if you wanted to use it on a card, you could cut a piece as you would like. But it was about the right scale that I wanted for my little village down there on my skates. So I used that and I cut two of them, and I think I ended up just using one, but I didn't know. I have a little scratch paper over here to just kind of test out some things, and I'm going to be using my distress markers. And I'm going to show you which colors I used here, but if you don't have distress markers, you could use your inks and stains. If you want to see the exact list of markers, you might want to hit pause here and make note of the colors that I use, but use whatever is your favorite. But because of the scale, I thought using my markers would be a good way to do it. And so for this first little house, I actually thought I was going to probably just scribble on my craft mat, add a little water, and paint it on. And after this first little house, I realized that I probably, as small as they are, I probably could do it better, faster, easier, just by coloring with the markers directly onto the little houses and the roofs and the trees. So I think this is the only one that I actually put the ink out on the craft mat, but you know, it's a good way for you to see that you can apply color using these in a lot of different ways. I will say that markers, where there was already some water on the paper, adding the marker directly to it kind of wicks up into the marker and doesn't lay down color very well. So if you are wanting to put color down the first time with these, I would just recommend adding them to the dry paper and then adding the water with your paintbrush. That was my one little tip that I discovered there. I found that it just works better if I'm adding color directly to it, pretty much to at least start with dry paper to put the marker on. So I'm just adding. I basically figured this was a night scene, so I'm not really using very bright or vivid colors for these houses because they're kind of lost in moonlight, at least in my head. That's where they are. So I'm just kind of using some muted shades. Walnut stain, forest moss, I used pumice. I think I used a mixture of fired brick and aged mahogany, kind of combining them. I wasn't super thrilled with how that house came out, and honestly, you kind of have to know what the colors are. I will say this, if I looked at the tips, I would have picked up the fired brick thinking it was the aged mahogany, and it really kind of was the opposite. The fired brick was the one that was actually the more vivid looking of the caps. So just kind of know your colors and use them. Maybe test them on a little piece of paper that's similar to what you're going to be working on, just to kind of find out. Now I started by adding some crushed olive, and I am using the brush end of the tip. You know, there's a fine point and there's a brush, and so I'm on all the trees. I'm adding some crushed olive, and then I'm going back in with peeled paint and just kind of touching in some darker shades of the green. Again, these are small. They really and truly did not take much time at all to put together and do the coloring on. Really like it. Then I'm going in with walnut stain and adding that roof on, and I believe I'm going to touch in all of my trunks right here. Now I'm being kind of careful not to let my ink bleed down into the snow. So you notice that I dried it, and then the last thing that I'm doing is I'm going in with my pumice stone marker, and I'm using the brush tip, and I'm touching all the edges so that there's no white edge. I'm going to show you how I created the snow here, and I'm using embossing paste because I wanted texture, and I felt like the easiest way to get that was to use this embossing paste. And you can see I'm just kind of putting a skim coat with that palette knife. But then I can go back and I can kind of build it up just a little bit and do some little snow drifts and whatever else I might want to do. It's not heavy. It's pretty quick to dry. If you don't have embossing paste, you know, you might take some gesso and maybe add a little cornstarch to it. That'll give you a little bit of that same look. And then I'm going to just add some kind of iridescent, very fine glitter to it while it's still wet. I love using different medium to attach our glitter with so that we don't have to wait and add another glue layer. And embossing paste holds on to to glitter really well. So now I have them totally colored, and I can begin to kind of figure out where I want to put what. And I liked that, and while it was when I put it up against this, I realized that my trees didn't have any snow on them, and that just, as snowy as the background is, the trees needed a little snow, the roof needed a little snow. So I just went back with my my distress, the Delusions, and put that in there, and then just sprinkled a little glitter on top of it. So now I feel like those are ready, and I'm showing you right there that you really and truly, they are very different. So you have to pay a little attention to which one you add back to which skate, because they actually don't match. They're literally two very different, See, I still didn't have it right. Asked me how I knew that I needed to pay attention to this. If I did it once, I did it probably 6 times, having to move them back and forth. So now I wanted to figure out which one was going to be in front and which one was going to be behind, because the skate that was going to be visible in the front, and you can see that's what I'm doing here, I'm going to be able to see the whole village or whatever I put on the scene there, but I'm only going to need to use probably a small piece of it for the part on the back. So I'm trying to figure out, do I want to keep it all contained within the shoe scene, and what part can I put where? So it just took a little fussing, and I ended up just drawing when I got it where I wanted, I just turned it over and put a pencil mark. But be sure and cut on the inside of the line, because remember, your pencil was going around the outside edge, and if you cut around the outside of that, you're going to have an even little bit larger than what you even wanted piece there. So, just cut around the inside if you've marked it with a pencil. So I've now figured out that I actually, from that one piece, I can actually manage to use both ends of the little village, and I can use the other one that I colored and got the snow onto for another set that I'm going to do here in just a minute. These skates would work for so many projects. I am going to make some Christmas ornaments for a couple of friends of mine whose daughters are skaters. They do figure skating, so I'm going to do some really fun little skate ornaments for them based on their competition costumes. So that's something that I've got working on. But these are going to be for a journal cover that I'm doing for a friend of mine. And you'll see now that I realized once I put the Christmas village on it, the background looked kind of stark. Like these houses just were in a place where there was no vegetation. So I'm just taking my markers and just creating a little bit. I used some peeled paint to make some more pine trees. I used walnut stain to make kind of some branchy trees. And when you put, I know they look, I'm not necessarily a tree artist, but I'm giving the suggestion of some trees there. And when you get your village in front of it, don't overthink it. Don't feel like you have to be perfection personified. Just give a little suggestion of what it needs to be there, and go with it. One thing that I should have done before I put that first one on is go ahead, and if you're going to do any distressing to your snow scene portion, go ahead and use your distressing to do that. And then I'm just using some Tombow Mono Multi-Glue to add the scene onto the background of the skate. And I'm going to add the Christmas village there onto the front of that. And you have to kind of play with it, and you may have to do a little trimming if it doesn't fit exactly right, because remember, we just kind of had an approximation when we did the dry fitting of it with our pencil and all of that. So just go with it and make it make it work. So now I'm going to add the little portion of the scene that you can see on the skate, the skate that is behind the other one. And I'm already loving them, and it's time to start working on adding the blades. Now, I just cut 2 little strips and put them on there. This is, in my world, that mirrored paper is kind of a precious commodity, so I wanted to use as little of it as possible. And so I just kind of checked to see where I needed to trim it off. And then there is a plastic film on the front that protects the mirror, and then there is adhesive on the back, so you've got a really good, you don't have to add glue or anything, you can just put it down. I love the silver mirror for those skates. I mean, I just think it's such a great detail. Okay, so for the laces, I am using actually some red thread that I pulled out of some burlap. It's nice and vintagey and rustic, and I love it a lot. And I am using, I think you have seen me do this before, when I'm threading with twine or jute or something, I create my own needles just by getting a thin piece of wire. I think that's a 28 gauge spool of wire, and I just twist it. And by twisting it, you kind of lock the thread in, and then it adds a little stability too. And I'm using my little pokey tool and kind of opening those up. I think this is such a great detail that Tim has added to this. To lace these up, I started at the bottom, left one end on the back, and then took the other one, and you go every other lace loop there and pull it through, and you will get kind of that first half of it. And then I just go and add another little wire needle to the other end of the string. I kind of pull it halfway through and left that other part behind, and you go, and now we're going around to the front, whereas on the others we were looping around and coming up through the back. Now we're going to loop around and go down through the front on every other one, and you can see that gives us that crisscross that you normally get when you have laces. And I just cut my needles off, and I'm ready to go. And if you grew up skating, you know that you almost always had laces that were much longer than you needed, and so they, particularly if you ever went and had to rent skates, they were never the exact right length. So you always wrapped them around your ankle and then tied them. And so I did that as well, and I'm just using my little tweezer bees there, and that helps me hold it in place, and then I can tie my loop and be done with it. I just think that crisscross laces just add such a great detail, and I really wanted a little touch of red on these. Like I said, they're going to go on the cover of a journal that I'm doing. So anyway, here are these fun little skates and the scene that I did with them. I'll come back and show you what the projects are that I actually did them in, but I hope that somewhere in here there were some techniques that maybe you could use on your own project. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and if you want to, you can follow me on Pinterest, Facebook, and Twitter. Hope you're having a very happy holiday and are saving some time for creative play. I'll see you soon.